Hi, Catherine. Thank you so much for joining us today as part of our National Grief Awareness Week podcast series.
Hi.
It's
Well,
great to have you here. And if you don't mind, I thought it would be good just to start by introducing yourself, introducing your role, and maybe a little bit about who you're going to be sharing with us today as well.
sure. Hi. My name's Catherine Bosworth. I'm the Director of Income Generation and Grants at a national charity called Hospice UK.
Perfect. And who are you going to talk to us about
Um,
today?
yeah, I think I'll probably focus most of my experience on my dad, who died about 4 years ago. But other stuff might come up as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see as we go through. But I think probably most of it will be my dad because that's a sort of quite a recent example.
Yeah. Okay,
So,
perfect. Well, thank you so much. Really great to have you with us. We approached you because we wanted to have a conversation about vulnerability in leadership. It's a big topic for us at the moment, where we're speaking to more and more people about actually how do we navigate these really significant life moments that happen to
mm,
us when we're in high powered, leadership roles where we
yeah,
have people who we are responsible for, and our emotions, a really big part of coming to work and the character, especially in fundraising. You
yeah,
have such an energetic sense to you that you bring into work. So actually, it was so nice to have you agree to come along today because I think more and more we're seeing across the charity sector that challenge for a lot of people who work in fundraising or marketing where we are expected to be characters, we're expected to be animated, we're expected to bring lots of enthusiasm and creativity into our work. And actually, we know that when grief happens and when we experience loss, it can really impact the way that we show up. So, one of the first questions, what would be really great if you could answer, is how did your leadership responsibilities change or shift as you were navigating your grief?
yeah. I mean, I think grief is a great leveler, right? So
Mm.
I don't think uh, you can deal with it as a leader in any other way than anybody else, really. I mean, you just have to sort of go with the flow to some respects.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, I think, to mask how you're feeling. Oh, I
Yeah.
found it difficult. I kind of wear my emotions on my sleeve anyway. It's something that I've always been very conscious of. So I suppose my approach coming back to work was to be as honest and open as I could with people.
Yeah.
And as many people, watching or listening to this will know, grief is quite a messy thing. I think we all think
Absolutely.
of it as a process that you sort of have to go through each stage, and it's a
Yeah.
sort of linear thing that I'll start now, and in 3 months' time I'll be here, and six
Yeah.
months time. And I found it very different to that.
Yeah.
And there's things that I did as a leader actually prior to my dad dying, which were really important. So I wanted to spend some time with him. It was during COVID as well,
Yeah.
which was a real challenge because of
Yeah.
the different rules that existed at the time. And in about February, it became apparent that he was quite poorly. Um, and I said to my boss, I'd really like to just go there if I can get
Yeah.
there legally and with all the rules that were in place, which I did manage to do, and just to spend a little bit of time with him and help my mum out a bit, who was really not coping very well
Yeah.
at that
Absolutely.
stage. So it's almost like a pre
Yeah.
bereavement, I think, that I was sort of going through then. And it was really lovely. And I'm looking back, I'm really glad I did it.
Yeah.
Um, and my workplace were incredibly supportive. And my boss, I remember the words my boss used at the time was, do whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
And at the time, that was what I needed to do. As a leader, I think I was just really open and honest about that. I said, look, I'm gonna be off for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
This is the situation. My dad's really unwell, but I don't know
What this looks like.
what this looks like, how
Yeah.
long it might be. But I'm not going to be that contactable. I'm going to try and
Yeah.
properly
Take a step
take a
back.
step back.
Absolutely.
And the team were great. I think that open, honest sort of approach, that people see you as a human being. They
Yeah.
see, I think they'd want the same treatment afforded to them if it happened to them.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that was my approach really at that time.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because we talk a lot about the importance of vulnerability and the power that it has to open those doors for others to be vulnerable in that space too. And you speak so wonderfully about your dad and your experience, and you have done very publicly ever since I joined the organisation, and actually other senior leaders, Toby earlier this year, the same about his mum very publicly, letting people know that actually that vulnerability exists. Regardless of your hierarchy in the business, that grief has no hierarchy and it impacts us all. It's like you say, it's a great leveler. And having that transparency and actually recognizing, being able to advocate for yourself in that moment to say, actually, I know I'm not going to get this time back, and I need to go and be with my dad right now, because that is where I need to be with my parents, to help navigate this moment, but also to create those really core memories. And I think one of the biggest lessons that we try to teach through the Compassionate Employers program, especially when we're speaking to managers, is about giving that gift of time, especially before, because that sort of gift of time and giving people that grace to be where they need to be in the moment that they need to be there is one of the best things that we can do for people.
I think that was one of the greatest gifts, because now, I didn't know it at the time, you don't, but now when I look back, because actually that was in February, my dad was still, he's spending a lot of time in bed, but he was still very, with us, and we actually had spent a lovely couple of weeks watching the rugby. He was a big Welsh, as am I, rugby fan, and just as luck would have it, Wales won the Six Nations that year. So we had some wonderful moments, and we talked and talked and talked. And I don't know how I would have got that, if I hadn't just gone down at that, and that my workplace would have given me that flexibility to just have those couple of weeks, I think, to do that. So that I was really grateful for that. And looking back, that was so important for my whole kind of grief journey, if you like, post dad dying and all of that. It made such a difference and meant so much.
Absolutely.
That I had that time.
And so I work in your department, so I do know a little bit about, the way that you navigate. I know there's been moments where I've had poorly children, or my dog dying, or grandparents passing away in the last year, and you've shown great compassion and empathy towards me. But how has your experience now kind of changed the way, I suppose, that you show up for the people in your teams? Has it dramatically changed, or perhaps were you already had those sort of qualities within you?
I think I've always had a tendency toward authentic leadership, because I have never been able to be something I'm not. So I pretty much wear my heart on my sleeve. And I want people to fit. I want them to know me. I want to be transparent. I want to be open and honest. Because I'd like people to be able to bring their whole selves to work as well. And I think that's something I've always believed in. So I don't think it was a sort of sudden change in personality that I was being open and honest about this as well. I think that probably was my style. But obviously this is a topic that's where you're much more vulnerable, I think, and much more exposed, and having to be honest that I was having a bad day that day. Other days you kind of feel fine. And of course, being Hospice UK, the subject matter of the work is very triggering. And, I remember actually being in a Compassionate Employers session, and we were talking about a case study, and it was a dad who had died from bowel cancer. And it was so close. That I just had to leave the room. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay, and so hopefully what I've learned from that whole experience in terms of leadership is it's okay to show that, and people, I think they appreciate that humanity, because we're all human beings at the end of the day. We're not robots. And that everyone is going to be affected by grief at some point, and it's just really important, I think, to show up in that way.
Yeah, and to create that space. I mean, we've spoken at length about psychological safety and the importance of really embedding that in
Yeah,
teams. And I think, there are definitely quite a few really positive ways that we do that within our
yeah,
team. But it'd be great to hear from you if people are thinking about taking that first step in terms of building
yeah,
psychological safety with their teams. What is your kind of top tip
yeah.
for doing that?
It's really interesting with psychological safety because I started talking about it quite a while ago, and
You
people
started a
weren't.
trend.
Yeah, people weren't really talking about it, and particularly my team were like, "What is all this rubbish,
Yeah.
that you keep going on about?" But it's absolutely at the top of my leadership agenda, and one of the first things I think, the first tips I would give is actually just start talking about it and what it is. So I would, call it psychological safety. But I say, it's feeling that it's okay to speak up about anything at work, and feeling safe, that you're safe to do that, and everyone can be themselves, and you can take risks with things,
Yeah.
and you're not going to get into trouble for that. That's the culture we're trying to create. So that's probably the first thing that I did, was just talk about it,
Yeah.
and in in the team environment. And then the next thing I think which helps is we actually just did a very basic survey of the team.
Yeah.
How safe do you feel speaking up in this way? This is the kind of team where I can take risks. Those sorts of questions, quite simple questions, not many, and putting that out there, and then seeing what we got back, and then actually repeating the exercise, which we've literally just done, and then kind of comparing.
Yeah, seeing where we are.
And that's been a really good exercise, because I think the results are, I was pleased with the results, and they were roughly what I was expecting. But there are a few areas I thought, okay, people, that we could probably do a bit more work here.
Yeah.
The other thing that I did that sort of linked to that is, depending on what sort of staff surveys people use, we use a kind of fortnightly pulse survey with our colleagues, and we managed to add some questions in specifically around psychological safety that you can then sort of
help kind of measure, right? Yeah.
So if you've got to measure stuff, right, to
be able to know,
to be able to know what the score is. So yeah, that would be my kind of, if you've never done anything on it before, start talking about it, and then just ask people, and then ask them again later, and ask them to be involved in the solution. How can we make this a more sort of psychologically safe place to be?
And one of the reasons we talk about psychological safety is actually, as you mentioned, those moments where we feel vulnerable at work, whether it's, with caring responsibilities, whether it's you're navigating anticipatory grief, or indeed, life after a bereavement. Psychological safety is crucial, because in those early months, in those early weeks, the brain fog, the lack of being able to make a decision, maybe the irritable nature of how our emotions can really show up and shape our relationships with the people around us. If we don't have a safe place to return to, then it can be really hard to return to work. And we unfortunately see a huge trend between bereavements and sickness absence, because that culture of safety actually isn't there. People don't feel like they can bring their full selves to work with all of the mess that grief brings into our lives. So I was just wondering if you'd mind speaking about your return to work. I know, we've touched on it before, and you've said it was a bit of a blur, but any kind of recognition of, how it impacted you, what maybe even just that practical side of what returning looked like. I think that's been one of those key questions that we get from leaders and line managers is, how do I return when I've got so many people who are reliant on me to make key decisions?
I mean, you mentioned brain fog. I found it on a bad day, the brain fog was off the scale. The inability to concentrate on the mundane tasks. I think when you have a bereavement like that, there's the world before your bereavement with your loved one, your dog, in it, and then there's the world afterwards. That is a very different place, and it changes your perspective. It's you feel change. You're never going to be in the the same world again.
Yeah.
That's quite a big thing. And when you're trying to then concentrate on task-based stuff or be really on top of, you know, what is often as a leader, very, very busy, lots of variety of tasks. It's really, really hard, I think. Again, I think the answer probably not rocket science for me. It's just that honesty about navigating that, and actually thinking about my boss, who suffered a bereavement of his mum, as you mentioned at the beginning recently. He had exactly the same experience, and that was really nice for me to be able to say to him, "It's the grief, you know.
You're not going mad.
You're not going mad. You're not losing the plot. It will pass, and you'll have good days and bad days. But this is absolutely a big symptom that you might not have expected. You know, you expect sadness. You don't expect brain fog and confusion. Well, not confusion, lack of concentration. So yeah, that's it. It's helped me to help others, I suppose, as well. Just recognizing that was a big part of the grieving process. I think coming back, it's that, because I mean, you have 2 weeks off, don't you? It's such a short time. You've really only had a chance to probably organise the funeral. In our case, you might not have even had the funeral. Ours was quite quick, because it was during COVID, so we were only able to have 14 people at the service, which was a bit sad in its own right. Then you've got all the sort of sad administration that you have to do, and that takes 2 weeks plus. And then you kind of go back to work. It's a strange period, but I think it's the grief hits you much later than that, really. And that's what I think is so important about kind of having policies in the workplace. You've got to have that flexibility within that. And, you're not cured of grief within the 2 week period that the bereavement leave allowed, and I think most workplaces realise that. But that sort of a couple of months down the line, 3 months, 6 months, anniversaries, key times of year, birthday, these are all difficult moments, and they can happen decades later.
And I think for a lot of people as well, I mean, grief is so unique and it manifests in so many different ways for different people. I know that, the first year after my dad died, I was really going through the motions, but it felt like a survival mode. I was just kind of do the funeral, sort out all of the administration, sort out trying to keep the family together and protecting my mum, you know, like that sudden vulnerability that you feel around your surviving parent, and really trying to be there to support them through that loss whilst also navigating a career. And then year 2 kind of comes around and you go, oh, this is reality. And it's actually, that moment hit me harder, I think, probably than some of those first year anniversaries, because it was that kind of, oh wait, this is actually a forever thing, and I've got to actually figure out how to keep surviving
I think
these moments.
What a lot of people who perhaps haven't experienced grief like that might not realise is sometimes when you wake up in the morning, you've forgotten that they've died. And you have to suddenly then relive all that grief again, and it's like it's just happened. It's such a strange thing. Or you might have had a dream with them in it. And then you wake up and they're not there, and it's the world without them. And that I found really difficult.
Those kind of grief waves, you know, the music that might
the music triggers are awful. I mean, music was a massive part of mine and my dad's connection, and lots of the musical tastes I have now I can blame him for. But you know, it doesn't take much to for me to sort of be crying, and often in the car because you're on your own, and then something will come on the radio, and it's just such a kind of connection to
just catapults you back to that moment, doesn't it?
It really does.
And I think that's a really big part of having these conversations about grief at work. And you know, a little video on this is to have the opportunity to talk about how normal it is for grief to exist alongside our careers, alongside our working lives, and actually recognizing that, you know, those waves of grief might hit us in the middle of a Teams meeting sometimes, or when you're presenting to a board, and actually being able to kind of continue and remain within your roles is really, really important. It's a huge part of our identities, isn't it? So it's really important as workplaces that we keep having these conversations about grief, about caring, about understanding those different significant moments in people's lives that they might be facing.
I mean, caring's a big, I can't imagine what it's like when I see what my mum went through caring for my dad, to be trying to hold down a job and caring for someone at that stage in their lives, when, even for someone who works in the hospice sector, the amount of patient advocacy I was doing just in that 2 weeks that I was there in February was huge. Liaising with district nursing teams, GPs, calling the pharmacy because of a later symptom, calling the emergency pharmacy, calling equipment suppliers. I mean,
and just never actually being able to switch off from having that caring responsibility, that constant.
Yeah. And some people are doing this as well as working, and so that caring thing, I think, we have to be really mindful of that. And hopefully people feel that they can, if you like, come out as a carer. Because lots of people, I think, are worried. But hopefully in our business and in our sector, it's less of a worry.
And we spoke to Jacqueline. I mean, we as an organisation, Hospice UK, has come a long way, and you've been here to see quite a lot of those changes, and I'm sure have been a big driving force behind a lot of those changes as well. And I think, one of the things that Jacqueline was saying is that, one of the lessons is that it's okay to be at a starting point. It's okay to be in a process of learning. We are all learning all of the time.
Totally.
And we talked a little bit about, the importance of having, really inclusive policies that meet the needs of our peoples, but also knowing that they have to be live documents that might have to be updated on a regular basis based on the new needs of the people within our workforce. And I think, the conversation about equity and inclusion around people policies, especially in significant moments, caring, bereavement, has become more and more of an important topic. And I suppose you might have seen that a little bit more in the last few years.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think that the policies can only go so far. I think we have to give our line managers enough flexibility to be able to interpret policies. I don't know if I'll be killed for saying this. So that they can adapt to the individual needs of people that they're managing.
Absolutely.
I mean, the policy didn't say, oh yes, somebody can take 2 weeks off before a bereavement. But in reality, that's what happened to me, and that's what I needed.
And so it is really important to give managers the autonomy, but also give them the guidance. I think, we spoke a little bit about how policies are like the backbone, they're the foundations, absolutely. Aren't they? It's really important. Organisations need them to have that structure.
Absolutely.
So that there is that equitable access to
exactly
the care that people need at those moments.
It's a foundation.
But actually having that comprehensive wraparound training or development or guidance is really important, so that managers can advocate for those people, like your manager could in that moment, and say, I know you well enough to know what you need, and I'm going to give you exactly that, and you don't have to ask, or worry about it. We'll cover everything in your absence. You take the time that you need right now, and we'll just check in, when you need us.
Absolutely. And it's, I think, training around how to have a difficult conversation. It's not just, it is about, if someone's experiencing a bereavement, it's so easy just to not know what to say, and so therefore not say anything. And, one of the biggest things that impacted me through my grief, which isn't a work thing, it's sort of a personal thing, was I got lots of messages and cards and things, but only one person picked up the phone and spoke to me, and it was the thing I needed, weirdly, and it must have been really hard for that person to do it, but it meant so much more than lots of people sort of saying, oh, you probably don't want to talk to anyone right now, but thinking of you, kind of thing. And I got just a lot of the same message, and that was obviously lovely as well. But it was the person who picked up the phone just said, how are you?
Yeah. And sometimes you have to be, I think, especially in leadership roles, in management roles, you have to be brave enough to sit in that uncomfortable conversation.
And I think I was the person before that who might have just sent a text.
Yeah.
And just,
but after that moment,
I call people now.
That's
so that really changed me.
Yeah.
And whenever I call people, they just say, "Oh, thank you so much for calling. It means so much." And they want to talk about the person who's died.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to talk about them anymore when they die. It's sort of suddenly it's the taboo subject.
Absolutely.
And all you want to do is talk about your loved one.
Absolutely. So if you have kind of one big tip or takeaway, I mean, that's a great tip, is actually don't be afraid to be in those, sit in that sadness with somebody, and actually just be there holding that space for them. But have you got any tips for leaders or people who are maybe aspiring to be leaders, who might have caring responsibilities on the horizon, or perhaps, be navigating bereavement in their current stance at the moment?
No, I mean, I think it just comes back to being honest and not being scared to show vulnerability. I think your teams get so much from that. I think it gives them permission to show their own vulnerability. So in so doing, I know you need to be brave, particularly if you're in a position of leadership, because you think you need to be strong all the time.
Yeah.
But actually, you're doing a really lovely thing by showing that vulnerability, because you give everybody the permission to then show theirs.
Yeah.
And that's what psychological safety and,
creating that culture
looks like. So yeah, that would be my sort of single most important thing, I think. Just
amazing.
And just what you said, that not being afraid to create that space where it might feel a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And where, you might have a bit of silence, but your job there is to sort of to listen and hear what that person might be going through. It's not to say, "Oh yeah, that happened to me," and this is. I mean, it's just everyone's different, so it's just sit with that. I think is a really good bit of advice as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing with us about your lovely dad. And I wondered if, to finish, you'd like to tell us a little memory, one that you think about when you think about him. You obviously shared about your love of music, or maybe your love of rugby together, but is there a memory that stands out to you that you want everybody to know a little bit about him?
I mean, he was an absolute comic fool, really, in many respects. And so a lovely man who I adored, but he did used to do the odd practical joke. And one thing that sort of springs to mind, when we were at a family wedding, and I was in the front seat and my dad was in the back. He'd had a few glasses of wine, and Mum was driving, and I looked round and Dad wasn't there anymore. And I said, Mum, Dad's gone. He's completely disappeared. So she completely panicked, stopped the car. We turned round. She said, "Oh my God, he's had too much wine. He's probably fallen out on the route." So we drove all the way back to this wedding, looking out the window, trying to find him and everything. What he'd actually done was he'd climbed into the boot for a laugh. And it wasn't until we sort of got back that we heard this little hello. That's one of the many things that he kept me entertained with over the years. But,
thank you for sharing. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Lucy.